Welcome to the Business Language. This is a different kind of podcast. It's not about lectures or lists of things to memorize. It's about immersion. The idea is that you learn to think in a certain way by being around it, the same way you'd pick up a new language by living in a new country. Over time, through quiet exposure, the patterns start to make sense. The goal here is to help you internalize a way of thinking about business, passively. You can have this on in the background while you work, commute, or just relax. My name is Alex.
And I'm Jordan. It's good to be here, Alex.
It is. So to start, I thought we could take a very common, very simple-sounding problem, something you hear all the time.
Okay.
Imagine a friend owns a small local coffee shop, and they come to you worried and say, "My profits are down this year. What should I do?"
Right. That's about as classic as it gets. Profits are down. It feels big and vague.
It is. And when a problem is big and vague, our minds tend to jump to the first available solution. What's the first thing that comes to your mind, Jordan?
I suppose you could raise your prices. A latte now costs 50 cents more. Or maybe try to get a better deal on your coffee beans. Find a cheaper supplier to save some money.
Exactly. Those are solutions, and they might be the right solutions, but the consultant's way of thinking, the structured way, doesn't start with a solution. It starts with a map.
A map. Okay.
Before we can figure out where to go, we need to understand the landscape of the problem. So let's just look at the word profit. What is it, fundamentally? What are the two pieces that make up profit?
Well, it's the money you make minus the money you spend to make it.
That's it. That's the first step. It's that simple. Money coming in and money going out. Revenue and costs. Before we do anything else, we just hold those two ideas.
Revenue and costs.
Right, because the problem isn't that profit is down. The problem is either that revenue is down or costs are up. Or, of course, some combination of both.
That already feels clearer. It's not one giant problem anymore. It's two separate areas to look at.
That's the entire goal, to replace a vague feeling of anxiety with a clear structure. Now we can take it another step deeper. Let's just look at the first bucket, revenue, the money coming in.
Okay.
If the coffee shop wants to increase its revenue, what are the only two ways it can do that?
They could sell more things, more cups of coffee, more pastries.
That's one way. What's the other?
They could charge more for each thing. That was my first idea. Raise the price of a latte.
There you go. That's it. For any business, revenue is just a function of those two things, the number of units you sell and the price you get for each unit, volume and price.
Volume and price. Right. So if revenue is down, it has to be because they're selling fewer cups of coffee, or they lowered their prices for some reason, or both.
Precisely. See how we're breaking the big, scary problem into smaller, manageable questions? The question is no longer what should I do, it's now, is my volume down or is my price too low? Those are questions you can actually go out and answer.
That makes sense. You can look at the numbers and see how many customers came in this month versus last month. You can check if you ran a discount that lowered the average price.
And this structure prevents you from making a mistake. For example, your first instinct was to raise prices, but what if the data shows the problem is actually that fewer people are coming into the store?
Then raising prices could make the volume problem even worse. Fewer people might be willing to pay the higher price.
It could, or maybe not. But the point is, you wouldn't be guessing. You'd be addressing the specific lever, volume, that's causing the issue. The conversation changes from, let's raise prices, to, how can we get more people in the door?
A totally different question.
So that's the revenue side of our map. Money in is made up of price and volume. Now let's look at the other side, costs, the money going out.
Okay, the money going out. This feels like it could be a long list. You've got coffee beans, milk, sugar, cups, employee wages, rent for the shop, electricity, water, marketing.
It can be, but just like with revenue, we can create a simple structure here. We can split this long list into two different types of costs. Think about the rent for the coffee shop. Does that cost change if they sell 1 cup of coffee or 1,000 cups of coffee in a month? No, the rent is the same regardless. It's fixed. Right, it's a fixed cost. Now, what about the cost of the paper cups they use?
Well, that changes directly with how much coffee they sell. If you sell 1,000 cups, you need 1,000 cups. If you sell one, you need one. It varies.
Exactly. That's a variable cost, and that's our structure. Every single cost on that long list you made can be put into one of those two buckets. Costs that stay the same no matter what, and costs that change with volume, fixed and variable.
I see. So rent is fixed, the salary of your full-time manager is probably fixed, but the cost of milk and coffee beans is variable.
Correct. And why does making this distinction matter? Why is it useful?
I guess because the way you would solve a problem with a fixed cost is very different from how you'd solve a problem with a variable one.
Tell me more about that.
Well, to lower your variable costs, you'd negotiate with your coffee bean supplier. You'd look for a better price on milk or find paper cups that cost a few cents less. It's about procurement, finding better deals.
Operational efficiency.
Right, but to lower your fixed costs, that's a whole different challenge. You can't just decide to pay less rent. You have to renegotiate your lease, maybe move to a cheaper location. If the salary is a fixed cost, you'd have to look at your staffing structure. Those are much bigger, more structural decisions. They are.
And splitting them allows you to focus your energy. If the data shows that your costs are up because the price of coffee beans skyrocketed, you know to focus on the variable cost side. You don't waste time thinking about your lease. It's creating a map again, a map of the costs. It is. So now, let's step back and look at the whole picture we've built. The problem was, profits are down. A single stressful statement. Right. But now we have a map. We know that profit is driven by revenue and costs. We know revenue is driven by price and volume. And we know costs are driven by fixed expenses and variable expenses.
It feels much less intimidating when you lay it out like that. It's like a dashboard with 4 main dials you can check: price, volume, fixed costs, and variable costs.
That's a perfect analogy. And a good consultant's job, really, is just to figure out which of those dials is flashing red. They don't walk in with the answer, they walk in with the right questions. And this structure provides those questions.
So you wouldn't say profits are down. You'd learn to ask, how has our volume changed compared to last year? How have our variable costs per cup changed?
Exactly. You replace panic with inquiry. And you'll notice we haven't come up with a single solution for our friend's coffee shop yet.
That's true. We've only talked about how to think about the problem.
And that's the hardest and most important part, to resist the urge to solve and instead to structure, to build the map first. The answers often become much more obvious once you can see the entire landscape clearly.
So this way of breaking things down, revenue into price and volume, costs into fixed and variable, is this a fundamental way of looking at any business?
It is. Whether it's a coffee shop, a software company, or an airline, the principles are the same. The details change, of course. For an airline, volume is the number of passengers, and a huge fixed cost is the airplane itself. For a software company, the variable cost for a new user might be almost zero, but the buckets, the structure, remain the same.
It's like learning the grammar of business. The same rules apply even if the vocabulary is different.
That's a good way to put it. And like grammar, you don't need to consciously think about it after a while. It becomes instinctual. When you hear profits are down, your mind just automatically traces this map. You immediately wonder about revenue versus costs and then drill down from there.
The immersion idea again. You hear it enough and your brain starts to build the pathways.
That's the hope. This structure, this map is the foundation. And once you have it, you can start to ask more interesting questions. Questions about the market, about competitors, about the customers themselves. But it all starts with this simple, clean separation of the problem.
It's a powerful way to bring clarity to something that feels messy.
It is. And now that we have the map, we can talk about how to use it to explore the territory. We can start asking the questions that lead to actual solution.
Okay, so we have our dashboard with the 4 main dials: price, volume, fixed costs, and variable costs. Where do we start looking? Do you just check all of them at once?
That's an excellent question, and the answer is no. You definitely don't check them all at once. That's the path to getting overwhelmed. The goal of the framework is to help you prioritize. The first step is always to figure out which of those 4 dials is causing the most significant part of the problem.
And how do you do that?
How do you know where to look first? Usually, you start by looking at the data historically. You'd ask the coffee shop owner for their numbers from the last couple of years. You'd want to see a chart of their revenue and a chart of their costs over time. One of them has likely changed more dramatically than the other.
So you're looking for the anomaly, the part of the system that's behaving differently than it used to.
Exactly. You're looking for the biggest deviation from the trend. So let's imagine we do that. We get the data for our friend's coffee shop. We see that their costs, rent, wages, the price of beans, have been more or less stable for the past 2 years. But their revenue, which was growing steadily, suddenly fell flat 3 months ago and has been declining since.
Okay, so in our hypothetical, the flashing red light on the dashboard is revenue. We now know where to focus our energy. So following the map, the next question is obvious.
Exactly. Is it a price problem or a volume problem? So, following our scenario, we ask the owner to check their sales data. They look and they see that the average price of a transaction hasn't changed. People are still spending about the same amount per visit as they always have.
So if the price per purchase is the same, but the total revenue from those purchases is down, it has to be a volume problem. They are making fewer sales.
Precisely. And notice the shift in feeling. Profits are down feels like a heavy weight. We're making fewer sales is a concrete fact. It's something you can start to analyze. The anxiety begins to fade and curiosity takes its place.
That's a great point. It does feel more like a puzzle to be solved than a crisis to be managed. So we know people are coming in less often. We've peeled the onion back a few layers. What's the next layer?
Well, the map can guide us even here. When we say volume is down, what does that actually mean? For a business like a coffee shop, volume is made up of 2 key components: the number of unique customers you have and the purchase frequency of those customers. How many people come in and how often do they come back? So is the problem that we are failing to attract new customers, or is the problem that we are failing to retain our existing customers? They are very different problems with very different solutions.
Right. If you're failing to attract new customers, you have a marketing and awareness problem. If you're failing to keep the ones you have, you might have a problem with your product or your service. 2 completely different paths to investigate. Right. If you're failing to attract new customers, you have a marketing and awareness problem. If you're failing to keep the ones you have, you might have a problem with your product or your service. 2 completely different paths to investigate.
And that's as far as we need to take our hypothetical for now, because we've done the most important work. We've taken a big, messy, emotional problem, profits are down, and we followed a clear, logical map down through the layers, from profit to revenue, from revenue to volume, and from volume to customer retention. We haven't solved it, but we now know the exact, specific, solvable question we need to answer.
And we also know which questions not to waste time on. We're no longer thinking about rent or the price of coffee beans or even raising the price of a latte. We have focus.
And that is a perfect place to leave it. We've gone from a single vague source of anxiety to a precise, answerable question. Next time, we can explore how a business might go about answering that question. We can talk about customer cohorts, analyzing feedback, and the difference between leading and lagging indicators.
I look forward to it.
Me too. The key, as we've discussed today, is to always start with a structure. To build that map before you take your first step is the surest way to turn a feeling of anxiety into a path of inquiry.
A much better place to be.
Indeed. And that's our goal here at the Business Language, to help you build these mental frameworks through simple immersion. Keep this playing and let the patterns settle. Over time, this way of thinking will become second nature. For myself, Alex, and for Jordan, thank you for listening. We'll see you next time.